Cuban consulted with Commissioner Adam Silver on the decision, and no players, coaches, or staffers have mentioned the change, according to a team source. So, Shannon, are you okay with Cuban's decision here?
I'm perfectly fine with the decision. And guess what, Skip? No one even noticed it till a reporter brought it to everyone's attention, and now everybody seemed to be outraged. Skip, we got to stop with this notion that gestures and symbols is a form of patriotism. Actions, deeds make you a patriot. Just because you fly the flag over your house doesn't make you a patriot. Just because you drink Budweiser doesn't make you a patriot. I'm sure those people that went up on January the 6th, Skip, on the Capitol, I'm sure they consider themselves patriots. And some of those guys were police officers, men and women. Some were in the military, men and women. That doesn't make you a patriot. Skip, guess what? When I was in school, and maybe when you were too, we used to say the Pledge of Allegiance every morning. We used to say prayers every morning. They took that out of the school. And if I'm not mistaken, they still have school going on currently. Schools did just fine without the Pledge of Allegiance and without prayer in it. I think the sporting events will be just fine. I've never met anyone that says, man, I'm going to that sporting event. Once I hear the national anthem, I'm dipping. No. Skip it, look. And plus the anthem, what we found out, we've become a lot more politicized, and it's, it's no more, you choose a side here or there. There's no more straddling the fence. Skip, the anthem, over the last 4 or 5 years, we see that it means a lot of different things to a lot of people. And some people, it's their ethos. It's their code. They believe in it. And some people like, nah, after listening to it and the guy that wrote it and what he was writing it for, nah, I want no part of that. And that's okay, Skip. We got to stop thinking, well, everybody played at all sporting events. Casual Friday is not the law of the land. It's up to your employer, Skip. If he says, I want you in a shirt and tie, and I want you in a nice outfit for the women, guess what? You better not show up there with an unbuttoned shirt and some khakis on. So the national anthem is not the law of the land. And I love that Adam Silver left it up to Mark Cuban. He says, if you want to play it, play it. If you don't want to play it, play it. It is not the law of the land of a sporting event. It should be left up to the franchise to say we want to or we do not want to. But I do not have a problem with it. Mark Cuban he's very looking. The one thing I know after following Mark Cuban, Skip, I've never met him, but following him on social media and listening to him talk on a lot of talk shows, he's very thoughtful. This was no I'm just taking this out. He put a lot of thought into this decision. And for me, now, it's going to be very interesting to see, Skip, when you start to get back to capacity and they don't have, not the national anthem. I mean, it's no big deal now, Skip. I mean, I'm sure people want to have things to complain about. But when you don't really have, the only thing you have is like front office people and the teams in the building. Once you start getting 15, 20,000 fans, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But I do not have a problem with Mark Cuban or any franchise not playing the national anthem at the start of a game.
Okay. I do have strictly a personal problem. This is just my 2 cents from a distance about that tradition before games.
Okay.
My first issue is with Mark Cuban himself.
Okay.
I never quite trust Mark Cuban's public stances because, to me, again, my 2 cents from a distance, and I've had my dealings and my issues with Mark Cuban, he is an egomaniac addicted to attention. And he knows full well this will create a firestorm of national controversy that will surround Mark Cuban with more and more attention.
Okay.
And by the way, just for the record, I have issued an open invitation to Mark to come sit here. Obviously, we can't have him in studio at this moment. To come virtually on the show anytime. Wide open, and I have not heard back from Mark Cuban about that open invitation. It seems to me that Mark Cuban got caught in a crossfire between his players who wanted to kneel for the anthem, great, and probably some of his sponsors who are still a little squeamish about players kneeling for the anthem.
Correct.
He is in the state of Texas. It is more of a right-wing state, as you well know.
Of course.
And obviously, you can't win that. You can't make everybody happy with how they respond to the anthem.
Correct.
And to me, he finally said, okay, I give up. I'll just do away with the anthem before our games, before our home games.
We don't have to worry about kneeling.
Okay, you just take it out of play. to me, it's a trial balloon to see how both sides respond, or the world in general, the country in general responds. And he did later last night email the Washington Post that no, that the Athletics initial report is not accurate, that it's not a done deal yet, that he's still thinking about whether to sustain this principle of this position of no anthem.
Right.
So it's still not finished yet.
Right. Pending.
Okay. Just for the record, I go back to my days in Dallas. Donald Carter originally bought the Mavericks when they were an expansion team, and he was definitely right-wing Christian, and he wanted to go with God Bless America before every game in place of the national anthem, the Star Spangled Banner. So for the first 16 years of the franchise, they went with God Bless America. Now back to your prayer in public school, okay, which was finally said, people said no. Okay, so that went on for 16 years until H. Ross Perot, you remember Ross Perot?
I do remember president.
Yes, bought the team, and for the next 4 years, he went back to the Star Spangled Banner. And then Mark Cuban took over in 2000 and continued with the tradition, obviously, the Star Spangled Banner. Okay, now this is just, again, me personally, playing that song before any sports event became, for years and years, decades and decades, centuries, a backbone tradition of this country. It was a uniting bond for a country that, as I've said to you 1,000 times on the show, we still have deep problems, obviously, especially when it comes to racial justice facing this country. But I do still believe it's the greatest country in the world. That's just me.
Yeah.
You can choose to look at it however you want to look at it. But to me, it's still a uniting bond for this country to stand before every sporting event and respond to that anthem however you feel like it. If you want to put your hand over your heart, good with that. If you want to kneel, great with that. But it is our uniting bond, and I hate to lose that tradition across the board.
I wouldn't.
Okay, I got it. I understand. This is my 2 cents, because that's just how I still love my country for all its faults. I got all the faults, and we've talked at length on this show about the faults. And the worst fault is racial justice. But to me, it is not Mark Cuban's right, just as the king of his little Maverick kingdom, to say, well, I take it away. Because it's a national right that we do this before every sporting event. And I know some people would say, well, why don't we just reserve it for the biggest events, the Super Bowl or the World Series or Daytona 500, whatever, you know. Well, then how do you pick and choose? I don't know what qualifies and what doesn't.
I love the fact that they started playing this in the 20s. I think they started playing it in the 20s at baseball games while blacks were being discriminated against and couldn't play that sport.
No doubt.
But they played but it was a representation of America. While blacks could not play a sport, you felt very comfortable with the representation. Skip, and I got again. And I understand what you're saying is that it's been done for so long. Let's just continue the tradition. But there are a lot of traditions that needed to be done away with, and we've done away with some, and we need to do away with some others. But that flag is not a true representation of America. And you're right, America is a great country. But the fact that America will not acknowledge its flaws, that's the problem that a lot of black America and minorities have with America, is that you won't even acknowledge it. All you're saying is just like what's going on right now. Let's give President Trump a mulligan. Well, give America a mulligan. Okay, we gave you a mulligan and you still haven't changed it. No. You keep telling us all lives matter. And when people say all lives matter, tell me the year, tell me the date, tell me the month. Since 1619 that all lives matter. Because if all lives matter, there would have been no black slaves. There would have been no slaves. If all lives matter, they wouldn't have done what they done to the Native Americans. If all lives matter, there would have been no Asian concentration camps during World War II. So don't tell me all lives matter when since 1619 it's never been all lives matter. It's only been one life that mattered.
Agreed. I still think we have the greatest country in the world, despite all you said. You're so dead on right. It's horrifying to me, everything you just said. I have zero issue with everything you just said, but we can't give up the fact that we still have a pretty great place to live despite its faults.
But think about this, Skip. America is the only country, is the only thing that says, okay.
A backbone tradition of this country. It was a uniting bond for a country that, as I've said to you 1,000 times on the show, we still have deep problems, obviously, especially when it comes to racial justice facing this country. But I do still believe it's the greatest country in the world. That's just me.
Yeah.
You can choose to look at it however you want to look at it. But to me, it's still a uniting bond for